There's no doubt he wanted to become a serial killer.
He's subjected to bullying and teasing.
I mean, I knew he had problems.
Acts of cruelty will accelerate to children and to adults.
He said he wanted to be famous.
To work and just drop the guy down.
The following stories tell the tale of 3 sadistic killers who were inspired by movies in their killing methods. The popular fictional movie series Dexter follows the life of a man named Dexter Morgan, who is living a double life. To most people who know him, he seems to be a nice man and a hardworking police officer. But in reality, while working in the homicide unit, he tracks down killers who escaped justice and kills them himself. Like Dexter Morgan, Mark Twitchell, who was a Canadian man, seemed like a nice enough guy. Mark had a simple enough life. He had a family he cared about and had dreams of making movies one day. All of that changed when he first came across the show, Dexter.
He thought, this is it. This is awesome. I love this show. I'm going to try and copy something like that.
Mark was especially interested in how Dexter Morgan lived a double life so convincingly.
Dexter Morgan could be sitting there next to you, and you would never know that this guy's capable of those sort of things.
In the show, Dexter Morgan claims the lives of many different people, wrapping their bodies up with plastic wrap after he kills them. He justifies this by saying that he's just taking out the trash, by only killing other killers and people who have done horrible things. Despite the fact that he's a cold, calculated killer, the show also shows a more human side to Dexter Morgan.
As the series went on, we also see Dexter do things that make him seem more human. He gets married, he has kids, he loses people he loves. In a weird way, he's a lot like us.
This story begins in the spring of 2008. Mark is 29 years old and seems to be living a normal life, providing for his wife and child.
He came across as a very normal, average person.
Mark was working in sales and his wife was home on maternity leave after just giving birth to their daughter.
He was very smooth. He was very charming.
Despite how charming he may have seemed, Mark was about to ruin not only his own life, but his family's lives forever. Mark becomes totally obsessed with the show Dexter. He started watching the episodes over and over again, and greatly admired Dexter Morgan.
He really liked the guy. He thought that was great.
It wasn't that the show had caused Mark to have violent thoughts. He was also attracted to these dark, violent elements, but the show helped him show a different way to pursue them in real life. And just like that, he was hooked. Instead of focusing on sales, he spent nearly all of his time watching or talking about Dexter. He was also obsessed with his dreams of making a movie.
He pictured himself as a Hollywood movie producer.
Mark's wife, Jess, didn't like that her husband was so focused on making movies instead of on his current job. Since they had just had a baby, she wanted him to be bringing home a steady paycheck. Before long, his obsessive tendencies began to take a toll on their marriage.
They weren't married that long, I believe just over a year, and they were already, she was sleeping upstairs, he was sleeping downstairs.
Despite his wife's concerns, Mark ends up quitting his steady job and pursuing film full-time. He comes up with this strange plan to raise over $1 million for a film he was going to do. He lied and told people that he already had a major Hollywood contract to make the film.
He was a very skilled liar, and he seemed to have no problem doing so.
All the while, Mark doesn't tell Jess that he had quit his job and simply pretends to be working from home. Mark managed to get several investors and raise around $100,000, which he lived off of. He ends up coming up with a script for a short film which is based off of the show, Dexter. It's a very dark, frightening film. He ends up using a local garage for the set of the film. It was then that he finally decided to open up to Jess about what he had been working on. At this point in time, she still looks at movie making to be just a hobby for Mark, not a career path. When he brings her to the set, she is shocked and disturbed by how much time and effort he has put into this project, despite the fact that they had money concerns. Could it be that this short film was more than just a movie, but the rehearsal plan for an actual real-life killing? At this point, Mark just viewed Jess as an obstacle, standing in the way of him being able to carry out his film, which he truly believed was going to make him rich and famous. He decides to move forward with the film, which he names House of Cards. Sergeant Clark explained the premise of the film.
A married man would be lured via the internet to meet a girl for the idea of having sex, meet her, and then come there, and he would be overpowered by an assailant and ultimately killed, and then dispose of the body. That was the House of Cards.
Mark did not only write and direct the play, but he starred in it himself. Part of the plot involved tying the victim to a chair where he would be stabbed. He used cornstarch and red dye to make fake blood. Part of why Mark was likely willing to go through all of this effort for the film was so that he could imagine what it would feel like to kill someone in real life. The only problem was that just pretending to kill someone was no longer enough for him. After he had finished the film, he went back to watch the new episodes of Dexter and felt a strong compulsion to kill. Would he be able to hide away these dark thoughts, or would he end up following through and actually killing someone? Dexter Morgan was Mark's hero, and he completely idolized him. His dark fantasies encouraged him to write something called the SK Confessions. The SK stood for serial killer. This document detailed his plan to become a serial killer.
There's no doubt he wanted to become a serial killer. I mean, the first line is, "This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer." That's his first line.
Mark went on to write that he had fantasized about killing people who had wronged him and was taking inspiration from the show, Dexter. Mark had a plan to kill. Now he just needed to find the right victim. His initial thought was to kill a married man for cheating on his wife, but he soon realized that if a married man went missing, people would be looking for him pretty quickly if he didn't come home. He decided that if he were to kill a single person, it might take longer for people to realize he was missing. So he concocted a new plan and made a fake dating profile online. He pretends to be a woman and goes by the name Sheena. He found a picture of a beautiful girl and attached it to his profile. Pretending to be this girl, he started getting lots of responses from men who were interested in meeting her. But Mark couldn't just choose the first person who messaged him. He had to be selective, because he would need the victim to be short and small enough that he would be able to overpower him, and not the other way around. After several days of combing through responses and profiles, he finally finds the right person, a 36-year-old man named Giles Tetrew. Giles was a lonely, single guy who had been working as a security guard. He was excited at the prospect of a new possible romantic connection. The two chat back and forth, and the conversation is going smoothly. He had no idea that the person he was speaking to is a man, much less a man on a mission to kill. They end up setting a date for the next Friday evening. The practice of pretending to be someone he really wasn't was something Mark had picked up from Dexter Morgan. Strangely, one aspect that Mark had seemingly once admired about Dexter, he is now ignoring. Dexter only killed those that deserved it, and he was on a mission to kill a man who had done nothing wrong and was committed to crime. He simply wants to know what it would feel like to take a life. Finally, the day for him to carry out his plan arrived. It's October 3rd of 2008, and Giles and Mark are messaging back and forth. Mark, still pretending to be the woman, instructs Giles to come to a garage. It's the same garage that he filmed House of Cards in. Giles thinks it's a little strange, but he is made to believe that she is doing this for her own safety. He is informed that the woman would watch from her bedroom window and would let him in if she found him to be attractive. Giles followed the instructions and arrives at the garage. Meanwhile, Mark has already prepped the garage for the kill and is masked and waiting, ready to finally make his dark dreams come true. No sooner had Giles walked into the door did he realize he had made a major mistake and was in serious danger. Mark was armed with a stun gun, which he planned to use against Giles.
He expected this stun gun to work and just drop the guy down.
After he managed to get Giles to the ground, Mark's plan was to duct tape him to his Dexter table, and he was then going to slowly kill him. But things didn't go nearly as he had expected. He attacked Giles, but Giles wasn't about to go down easy. He fought back, quite literally, battling for his life. At the time, he believed that he was being robbed. He knew he had to get out. He hadn't told anyone where he planned to go that night, and if he was kidnapped or wounded, they wouldn't know where to look. When Mark eventually realizes that his stun gun isn't quite doing the job, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a handgun. Giles reaches out to touch the gun and is filled with immediate relief when he feels plastic and realizes the gun is not real. The two continue to fight, and Giles manages to somehow make his way out of the garage. But he doesn't get far. Once he gets outside, Mark manages to grab him by the leg, dragging him to the ground. He then tries to bring him back inside the garage. Giles knows he can't allow himself to be dragged back in the garage because he will certainly be killed. But he's also exhausted by this point.
He goes to get up, he can't get up. His legs, he describes them as just not working. This is like a Hollywood movie.
As the two men continue to fight and struggle, a man and woman happen to be walking along the sidewalk nearby. They see what is going on and are scared. Giles is screaming at them to help, but Mark tries to play it off as if they're just goofing around. The couple doesn't know what's going on, but they are too afraid to help Giles, and they eventually walk away. But Mark is startled by the fact that two strangers saw him attacking Giles, and he ends up running back inside and leaving Giles alone.
He says, I just got in my truck, fired it up, and drove away.
When Giles was finally home, he was in shock and still processing what had happened. He decided that he probably should call the police, but when he pulled up the fake dating profile to use as evidence, it had already been deleted. Believing that there was no way to prove what had happened, he didn't contact the police at that time. But later on, after more information had come out about Mark, Giles would finally go public about what happened. He even wrote a book about his experience entitled The One That Got Away. In an interview, Giles explains that it took him time to mentally recover from what had happened.
Yeah, it's much easier now. At that time, every time I recalled it, I got nightmares and shivers down my back every time I thought of him and thought about what happened in that garage. And it was tough.
Following the attack, Mark is concerned that Giles will call the cops and that law enforcement will arrive at the garage at any moment. But of course, because Giles never called them, they didn't show up. The more time that goes by without the cops coming by, the more Mark starts to get his confidence back, and he believes that he is ready for his second attempt. Just 1 week later, on October 10th, Mark sets his eyes on a new victim. This time, it's 38-year-old Johnny Altinger. Johnny was a simple guy with a close family and plenty of friends. He worked a labor job and was pretty happy. What he didn't have was a girlfriend, and when he came across Mark's fake profile, he was pretty excited. This time, Mark used a picture of a different woman, and using a different name, he referred to himself as Jennifer. Because Mark's first attack went so badly wrong, he knew he had to do things differently this time around, and so he changed his weapon from a stun gun to a lead pipe. Mark provides Johnny with directions to the same garage he had led Giles to. The only problem was that Johnny arrived 45 minutes early and Mark wasn't ready yet. When Johnny enters the garage and looks inside, he comes face to face with Mark. Mark claims that Jen will be right back and that Johnny is welcome to wait, but Johnny seems to sense that something is wrong and tries to leave. It was then that Mark grabbed the lead pipe and slammed Johnny over the head with it, over and over, until he was dead. Just as Dexter Morgan would have done, Mark picks up Johnny's body and loads the remains into trash bags. He then dumps them into the sewer. As if he hasn't already done enough, Mark breaks into Johnny's apartment, opens his laptop, and sends a message to all of his contacts in which he claims to have run away with a girl and gone out of town temporarily. Johnny's friends don't believe the message and eventually contact the police. At first, police don't have much to go off of, but as they search through Johnny's emails, they discover one that he sent to a young friend prior to going on the date, that he expected to be with a woman named Jess. He had provided the exact address of the garage. The police quickly realize that this property was rented by Mark, and he is called to the garage by police to answer questions. He ultimately drives there and unlocks the garage for investigators. Police believe Mark is a suspect and ultimately bring him in to the station for questioning. It's kind of odd that you're filming that sort of thing. An officer questions Mark when he claims to be filming a thriller at the same time the alleged victim arrived at the garage. Before long, police are able to put clues together and locate Johnny's red Mazda, not far from Mark's garage. Mark is brought back in for questioning, and this time, Sergeant Clark is very straightforward.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're involved in the disappearance of John Altinger.
When the police search Mark's car, they find not only weapons, but a laptop containing the SK confessions. Police would later show up at Mark's home and begin taking pictures of evidence. Finally, Mark is arrested and charged with murder. He also provides a map for how police can retrieve Johnny's remains. Mark is ultimately handed a life sentence. Had he not received this, it is likely he would have gotten away with more killings during his lifetime. The Purge is a fictional movie in which the government comes up with a dark, twisted plan to deal with problems like unemployment and overpopulation. It involves one day a year for 12 hours where crime goes unpunished. Violence fills the streets, and anyone could die. While the movie is meant to be for entertainment purposes only, one Indianapolis teen named Jonathan Cruz became obsessed with the concept to the point he wanted to engage in a real-life purge. Jonathan grew up in Florida and was raised by a single mother. She was always working and paid little attention to him. They didn't have very much money, and Jonathan's mother spent little time checking in on how her son was doing. Jonathan's mother ended up getting a job in Indianapolis, which was why they were going to be moving. He didn't take to the news very well.
A move is always hard. When you move to a new place, it's always scary and unsettling. But when you're a kid who lacks that sense of belonging to a family, it's a very disconcerting, isolating experience, and Jonathan took it pretty hard.
Jonathan started school at a new high school, where he had trouble fitting in and making friends. While it may have helped to have had a supportive family to help with this transition, he had no one. Life became pretty hard for him.
When Jonathan moves, he's subjected to bullying and teasing. He doesn't fit in.
As a way of coping with the bullying, he develops an aggressive nature and starts getting into fights. He ends up falling into the wrong crowd and getting associated with the well-known gang, the Bloods. He even gets a red star tattoo on his face to show his dedication to the gang. Jonathan wants to be able to prove that he is committed to the Bloods, and he knows that part of it will require him to kill at some point. When he first sees the Purge, he finds himself rooting for the bad guys, wanting to see as many people killed as possible. He decides that he will start his own purge. He purchases a revolver, and on May 12, 2016, he follows through with his plan. While armed, Jonathan and several friends start driving around looking for people to kill. His eyes fall on a man walking alone down the street. This man is 54-year-old Billy Boyd. While his friends look on, Jonathan shoots and kills Billy. He then hops in the car and goes off looking for his next victim. Jonathan has convinced himself that he is truly living in a real purge, and he wants to complete more killings before the 12 hours are up. So they continue to drive around for hours, until they spot their next victim, Jay Higginbotham. Jonathan kills Jay while his friends record on their cell phones. He then robs him before jumping back in the car. Jonathan is now drunk with power and can't wait to kill again. But who will his next victim be? Is he really as invincible as he seems to feel? By this point, police have already been made aware of Billy having been shot. They know a killer is on the loose, and the city of Indianapolis is terrified. Meanwhile, Jonathan is celebrating his success. After doing drugs with friends, he goes out to kill again. He approaches a man named Larry Shaw and robs him at gunpoint. He is too afraid to shoot him because it's now nearly morning, so he slams him in the head with the gun instead. But Larry survives and manages to call the police. Just one day later, Jonathan claims yet another life, that of a man named Jose Ruiz. Now that he's gotten away with it 3 times, he feels more powerful than ever, and the police do not have many leads. But then one young woman comes forward and provides the police with some information that could eventually change everything. She tells police that she met up with Jonathan in hopes of buying an illicit substance from him. But Jonathan wants more than money. He wants sex. The girl refuses and runs away from Jonathan, and he chases after her, pins her down, and holds a gun to her head. He then throws himself into his car and kidnaps her. He even shows her the videos that he had on his phone of the killings he committed. She eventually convinces him to let her go, but not before he threatens to kill her. A very short time later, Jonathan is arrested and charged with the killings. His crimes shocked the nation. One of the prosecutors involved with the case reportedly said he has never seen anything like this in his 7 years as a prosecutor. Jonathan was eventually given 3 consecutive life sentences. He stared right at the camera as he was led away from the court after sentencing. Luka Magnotta, whose birth name was Eric Newman, was born in Ontario to a mother who was often cruel and a father who struggled with mental illnesses. He would end up being sent to live with his grandmother. He was homeschooled during that time because he had been told that the world was a dark and dangerous place. While his family was often in shambles and he didn't have great relationships with either of his parents, he was very close with his sister, Melissa. Melissa was always there for him and even helped support him when he was diagnosed with depression. When he sought treatment for his condition, his doctor warned him to take his mental health seriously. You have a medical problem, and you need to always take medication. If you do not, your life is going to get messed up, he was warned. When Luka was only in his early 20s, he began engaging in illicit services and even started starring in adult films. This was something he was quite proud of, as he described in an interview for Naked News.
Yeah, I really do enjoy my work. I get to meet new people and all the time, and I'm a people person, and it just worked out great for me. You know what the best part is? The best part about being an escort is I'm my own boss. I get to pick my own hours and make a lot of money.
He would also frequently change his appearance in hopes of becoming a successful model. Luka was still pretty young when he got mixed up with the law in 2014. He had committed fraud against an adult video company and had also impersonated a woman in order to get a credit card. He then used that credit card to spend thousands of dollars on himself. While the woman was of age, she did not have the mental capacity of an adult and was easy for him to take advantage of. He would end up spending 9 months in prison and then 9 more months on probation. Now, with a criminal background, Luka officially changed his name. Just a year later, he would end up meeting a transgender woman named Barbie, who would eventually become his girlfriend. At the time, Barbie could tell there was something a little off about Luka.
I I knew he had problems. It showed, when I was with him. Just his body language stuff he would do sometimes. It's just, in his character, you could just... his mannerisms.
Luka was incredibly obsessed with his appearance and how others viewed him. He also had an intense desire to be famous one day.
He said he wanted to be famous one day. I mean, that was his dream. He said, one day I'm going to be famous.
Luka had become obsessed with himself and constantly asked Barbie to take pictures of him. He wanted to be beautiful, youthful looking, and perfect. He also wasn't ashamed of the amount of plastic surgeries he went through to get a certain look.
I've had my nose done. I've had 2 hair transplants, like I said before. And I'm planning on doing muscle implants in my pecs and my arms. So that just remains to be seen, but because that's pretty...
Could it be that Luka was actually obsessed with changing his appearance? He didn't disagree with this assessment and even claimed he was an addict.
Yeah, my name's Luka and I'm a cosmetic surgery addict.
In fact, Luka viewed looks as more important than anything else in life.
Okay, number 1 is looks, number 2 would have to be intelligence, and I don't know what the rest are.
While Luka gave it his best shot to land a position on a reality television show based upon his appearance, things wouldn't go as planned, as he would eventually be overlooked. He was not being given the attention he long desired. He took to online messaging boards in hopes of finding a way to still prove himself. What he did next to gain attention was as strange as it was incredibly upsetting and disturbing. He posted an anonymous video of himself to a message board, playing with some adorable kittens. He snuggles with them and treats them with care. He then places them in a plastic bag and uses a vacuum to seal it, eventually killing them. The video caused massive outrage online, and many people started searching campaigns to figure out who the man in the video was. Police treated the video very seriously for several reasons.
Certainly, past history has proven that acts of cruelty will accelerate to acts of cruelty to children and to adults.
Police believed Luka was connected to the video, but he was hard to find. He went by many different names and claimed to live in many different cities, and even different countries. Once the video started to get connected with Luka's real name, he walked into the office of The Sun and tried to defend himself. "People framed me, so isn't it logical to try and defend myself?" he said. Online sleuths were working overtime to track Luka, but this only excited him more. He was fueled by the attention.
What's up, and hi to all my fans.
Luka's dark actions would become even more sinister, if you can even imagine that. It was spring of 2012, and a foreign exchange student named Jun Lin from China had arrived in Montreal. He loved his new home and was very happy. He would regularly send his mother pictures depicting his new life. Yun happened to move into the same apartment complex that Luka was living in at the time. The pair would soon be connecting in a very horrific way. At the time, there were videos circulating the web suggesting that Luka was a serial killer and that everyone should be on the lookout for him. Strangely, police believed Luka was making these videos himself in some sort of sick attempt to get even more attention. He was also posting strange, cryptic messages on message boards, at one point writing, "I'm just curious to know what you guys think about people who film their crimes." It appeared he had a plan in the works. Just a week later, on May 24th, Yun Lin didn't show up to work and never called to say why. His friends were worried and reached out to his mother to see if he had spoken to her recently, but he hadn't. Everyone had a bad feeling that something had gone seriously wrong. On the same day that Yun failed to show up for work, a report was made online that cryptically read, "Luka Magnotta is an extremely dangerous psychopath. Psychopaths can appear very charming and look beautiful, but beware. They are cunning and highly maniacal." The very next day, a horrific video began circulating around the web. It shows a man tied up, laying on a bed. At first he's alive, but the video cuts away, and when it returns to him, he is clearly dead. During the 11 unbearable minutes, a figure can be seen sticking the body over and over again with an ice prick. The video ends with the body being disappeared. Just 4 days later, a janitor stumbled upon a suitcase. Inside were some of the remains of Yun Lin. Finally, police approached Luka's apartment and knocked on the door. While he was nowhere in sight, they found blood everywhere. They also found a message in red letters that was written on the wall. It read, "If you don't like the reflection, don't look in the mirror. I don't care." Luka had fled the country, and an international manhunt ensued in hopes of finding him. He was finally arrested in Berlin after his identity was confirmed by his fingerprints. He was delivered back to Canadian authorities and faced a slew of charges. He would eventually be given an automatic life sentence. Thanks for watching. Please click the like button and sleep tight.